So, next speaker we have is Bipin P Kumar. The Bipin is a co-founder of Gaia Smart City, building greater product and team. He is experienced technology professional with a strong business and strategic view, proven record of innovation and thought leadership. He has successfully led cross-functional teams and advised senior executive in both a startup and startup environment and a large enterprises. His core competency is developing, advancing, and dynamically adapting strategic vision and plans, analyzing and finding new business opportunity, maximizing existing product live opportunity, and creating strategic news. I invite Bipin to take over the stage. Welcome him. Bipin.
Morning, everybody. Just for the record, I didn't send him the introduction. I'd forgotten to. But having said that, so my talk is, I'm going to hopefully inspire you to do, to understand a little more about smart cities and do your own things. I'm not going to detail a lot. I'm not going to do a lot of details about the technology aspect. Professor Bharadwaj has already given you a really good understanding of all of that. So my talk is titled Supersymmetries. As most of you know, in particle physics, what supersymmetry is. The supersymmetry is the principle that proposes the relationship between two elementary particles. And I believe IoT and smart cities are in many ways that. I'm going to start off with this. How many of you know the framework of smart cities? A very non-technical thing, but how the smart cities thing functions really. How many of you know? No? Well, fundamentally, you have the citizen and the city administration. I think you all must have guessed that. But after the city and the citizen and the city administration come together and create the smart city plan, this is the structure that follows. Firstly, an SPV is created, a special purpose vehicle is created. The special purpose vehicle is tasked with the entire smart city objectives, bringing it all together, fructifying it. The SPV then brings about what is known as the program management consultant on board. The program management consultant and the SPV design the smart city. These are the two entities tasked with bringing out what the city wants from the citizen and the city administration. They put a framework in place. They put a framework and then they bring up the RFP, the request for proposal. The first RFP is to get your MSI on board, your master system integrator. Every city has a master system integrator. The master system integrator then implements what the PMC and the SPV want, and they bring out solution providers. So typically, other than big companies that are MSIs, we all individuals or companies become the solution providers. This is the role. This is how it does architect. You determine and design, you implement. That's the whole structure that I told you. So as solution providers, we will have to work with an MSI. There is no other alternative. All the solutions that Professor Bharadwaj spoke about will have to go through the MSI. This is how, if you had to work with a smart city, these are the various possibilities of working with a smart city. So as you all heard from the last slide, you have the government, you have the solution provider, the service provider, and you have the citizen. Between each of them, there are relationships as well. Each has an entity. Each has a role to play. If you are a citizen and you want to work with the government, you have a citizen engagement group, you have the civic groups as well, and you have citizen-based city apps. These are the three main. Again, unfortunately, there is no financial model between the citizen and the city administration. There are financial models between the government and the service provider. Typically, what is known as a PPP. There can be various forms of PPP. What we know is typical PPP, but new forms are coming out with the blockchain and stuff like that, which eventually looking at PP 2.0 or PPP 3.0 as can be called, and I'll let the others, and maybe I'll cover some parts of it towards the end. In all this, Bharata spoke about what the task force had done. Does anybody want to know what the outcomes, a brief summary of what the outcomes of the smart city task force were in terms of what they analyze smart cities want? Does anybody want to, I mean, if you all would like to know that, I can give you a small snapshot. Anybody keen on finding out? Yes, no? Yes, sure. Then I'll quickly go through, I put it the absolute last. So this is what we found out from the task force. When the task force analyzed 90 smart cities, what 90 smart cities want, they found out that of the cases, use cases, individual use cases, you can have 44 use cases that can be said belong to the ICT domain. Pretty much what everybody here in this room will be interested in. 50 of them, like building roads and building parks and other infrastructure, non-ICT related, but they form a larger number. However, I mean, this is the budget. If you look at the breakdown, in fact, we can classify the requirements of smart cities under 6 major verticals: energy, power, transport, water, waste, and others, which pretty much can come under a lot of other things, but your command and control is one. These are the budgets. The budgets are not coming, but the largest budget was for transportation at about 11,000 crore. Can you just press that, see if it's coming? The last slide. This slide, just press enter. One more enter. Oh, it's not there. Sorry, the budgets were there. You have seen oh, that's a sum total, by the way. 54,000 crores actually assigned to ICT related services. Non-ICT related services about 51,000 crores. The breakup is as here. That's the breakup. 28% goes into transport. Transport is the biggest sector actually. Parking, all that comes in the transportation sector. So you can understand roughly out of 100 and odd thousand crores, 28% is for transport. That's your answer. So that's the broad breakup. Can you just go back to slide number 3, please? So this is what we are. We are a small startup called Gaia, and we do both consulting and products. In consulting, and that's how I know some of these things, we are the architects or the designers for 3 cities, Agra, Lucknow, and Aurangabad, and we have another 2 more yet to sign, but 2 more in the pipeline. So we actually help the cities build the RFP that eventually go into making the solution that the city wants. In addition, we have products. And the first product that we have, the network service, the network providers, is something that we built jointly with the Indian Institute of Science, the Bharadwaj's team. We have that, unfortunately, we have that only one implementation in Kakinada. It's a low power wide area network, the only one of its kind for a smart city that belongs to a smart city, is owned by the smart city. Then we have a product, Smart Feedback, which is what I'll talk about, which is the use case that Naveen wanted me to talk about. We have the number of 105 cities in India. And in the enterprise space, as a startup, we have to do different things to survive. And consulting and product is what we had to do to survive. Otherwise, we would have actually chosen to do only product. Consulting gives us the revenue to do some of these things. We are not funded. This is the actual RFP from the Agra Smart City. Yeah. So as you can see, you have the command and control. You have the intelligent traffic system, and in fact, the number of points are also identified. How many smart parking? How many smart cameras that are there at what junctions? I think we have 69. Yeah, 69. At 69 junctions, you have cameras. How many RFID-based smart home systems? 300,000 there. So the exact number is also identified in the RFP, so that the solution provider can actually say, yes, this is what I want. This is what I'm looking at, and including the technology. Now, this RFID technology is short range, passive. It goes to that extent, saying yes, this is how it needs to be. What else is there? Then you have the GIS, yes. So these are all IoT-based solutions. These are all technology-based solutions, pure. You have the command and control software. You have a video wall. all those other, but this is part of the Agra Smart Cities requirements. The MSI has been identified. The MSI is actually Bharat Electronics from India, from Bengaluru. You have Aurangabad, almost in a similar manner. This is the use case that I want to talk about, what we do for smart cities. And we extend something called nudge economics. The nudge economics, one its leader, proposer, the Economics Nobel for 2017. He talks about how you can nudge people to do simple things. And while he talks about nudging people to do simple things, we have extended it to say not just nudge people, but you can also nudge governments and enterprises to do much more. Better services, improved service delivery, including acceleration of service offering. Because when you're trying to work with the government, one of the things that sets you back, and one of the things that sets startups like us back is a slow pace of functioning. And I guess they have their own, well, not I guess, they have their own reasons for doing it. There's a lot of procedural work, everybody has to be safe. Things like that unfortunately don't work with, startups. Maybe, Professor, your institution can work with it. So we have this, it's a simple device to get feedback, and we have this in Delhi Metro Rail. We have this also in about 30 odd northwestern Indian railways, also in the Shatabdis. We have this in 32 airports in India across 11 different functions. This is what our team is currently deploying right now. We have this in over 4,000 different ULBs. This is for the sanitation facilities. And what we have realized is an extension of this. I mean, even if people don't give feedback, it's a derivative of that. It's called the mere measurement effect. Just by actually trying to measure some things, you realize that people act in accordance with what the results should be. So if you're trying to measure if something is clean or if something is, if a function is working properly, they will make sure by knowing that you are measuring it, that they will act in accordance with that. It's an interesting outcome. Even if things don't work, what I'm trying to say is even if the things don't work, just by the fact that it is there, people act in accordance with it. We've been doing a lot of things with the United Nations, and all of these, so that actually works with UN SDG, I don't remember the number, UN SDG 11, 16, and 6. Similar thing is employed in the private space, in the enterprise space, but we don't do explicit feedback. We gather feedback to sensors. So that is a proximity sensor in one of the press machines. We measure productivity. That's in Amul, about 68 sensors, 68 warehouses of Amul have these temperature and humidity sensors to measure quality of the milk that comes out. We measure temperature, but we measure quality. And similar thing with in Amul workshop again, where we measure gases, sulfur and ammonia. Again, we measure cleanliness. We measure voltage. This is ironically in Delhi, in the Delhi electricity service, where we measure how many times the power is gone, not in residence houses, of course, but in VIP locations and in high value customer locations. And we measure how often it has gone and what is the loss of revenue accounted by that. And again, all of this, by virtue of what it does, eventually addresses some or the other UN SDGs. Those are all the things we measure using sensors. Now, what I want to take a deviation is to show you what is happening in China. And this is to give you all an idea, give you a comparison of what it is that we are doing versus what the rest of the world is doing. I just picked up China, and this is a classic example. If you can see the board, the left graph, the icon on the graph shows you how much of cement the US used in 100 years. Can you see that? 4.5 gigatons. On the right side is how much of cement China used in 3 years. Can you see that? 6.6 gigatons. What China used in 3 years of this first 3 years of this decade is more than what the US used in the last 100 years. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because, not for you all to be amazed at that, but the fact is that you can't do such kind of consumption without extreme automation, without extreme use of technology, and which is what I want you all to see. You can't do this without actually putting in sensors in place, without getting data analytics systems in place, without putting data exchange systems in place. You cannot achieve something like this. And if you go back, the Chinese dance with IoT happened way back in 2009, when the Prime Minister there, Wen Jiabao, actually brought about this in the Chinese Academy of Sciences. And he said, if you're doing, I think he kind of anticipated this extreme consumption, and he said, you can't do this without automation. And he brought the term IoT in 2009. In 2011, in China's 12th five-year plan, they had included the use of IoT for building cities and for building their infrastructure in the 12th five-year plan. And that's the way China has progressed. After that, after their inclusion in the 12th five-year plan, you all know we are putting in about $50 billion. That's the number we have at the government of India saying into our smart cities mission. China has also said not just IoT and smart cities, they're pumping in $600 billion into the IoT ecosystem by 2020. They're pumping in $300 billion separately into the smart cities mission. And while Bharadwaj said that we have one of the largest smart city rollouts in India, at 109 cities to be precise, China has 500 cities. Well, it's a different scale altogether. We are a much bigger country, so I don't bear than that. But the takeaway from this is what they are expecting in return. This is documented. In fact, I was there a month ago, and I asked the Chinese officials this. They're expecting a $1.7 trillion return on investment by 2030. At that time, the GDP for China is $30 trillion. Our GDP at that time is $7 trillion. So 1/3 of our GDP they expect as return on investment in the smart cities and IoT space. That's the kind of growth that they are seeing just in what we're talking about as IoT and smart cities. They had demonstration, as part of the 12th five-year plan, they had demonstration projects in 9 areas, pretty much what we are doing here in India too. All the areas that Bharadwaj actually spoke about: industry, healthcare, agriculture, logistics, environment, public safety, grid, and ITS. But the scale is entirely different. When they talk about smart grid as a demonstration project, they're actually doing a demonstration of 200 million smart meters as a demonstration project. That would probably be the size of our market. If you're talking about smart transportation and logistics, they're putting in, I think 6,000 roads is what they said they'll do, electronic toll collection. I think we are looking at, anyway, we don't need to compare, but this is the kind of demonstration projects that they're looking at in comparison to what we're doing. Bharadwaj spoke about the common service, the data exchange layer. So we have that in our National Digital Communication Policy, which is released about 2 months ago. We have a requirement for that. It is there in the policy. It says you have to have, in fact, it says common service requirements for city level exchange. It is there in the policy, and they talk about how common service layer is something that we will implement. It is something that is required. A lot of agencies are working towards that, and this ensures that data from one system is used by another department, used by another system, used by another municipality, used by another state, for example, and they want to connect all this data exchange that you spoke about between cities, not just between cities, but also between states, because that's where the true value is. And the example that I give is in Delhi. Anybody know what the national average for water, non-revenue water is? The national average. How much of water that we use is not billed? Anybody know? Sorry? No? 68%. 68% is our non-revenue water. And at the same time, and this is not a national, but in Delhi, how much of energy is used for water? To pump water from one level to another. No, again, 40%. 40% of Delhi's electricity is consumed to pull water from the pump, to push water into the sump, to pump water from the sump to the overhead terrace, and then to put pressure so that you have a nice shower or whatever is required. 40% of energy is used just to pump water from one source to another. If this kind of data is known between the different departments, you know, they themselves can evolve to a better level of service delivery. Moving quickly to change track, in India, we're working towards something called the essential requirements and the mandatory testing and conformance. Means every IoT device that is being used will have to pass through some of these requirements or certifications and such formal programs before actually it gets used. And they're actually looking at 7 areas initially. The 7 areas are the health, your IoT gateways, your non-cellular LP-WANs, your non-cellular LP-WAN gateways, your energy meters, your tracking devices. All these areas now they've identified, I think they are in the pipeline to